Hi everyone, it's David from Automotive Press. Today I have a Honda Pilot, and what I want to do is compare this to two other very important competitors, Mazda CX-90, one of my all-time favorite three-row SUVs, as well as the all-new Toyota Grand Highlander. Which one do I like better? Well, it depends on what you're looking for. So let me compare all three of the three-row SUVs and tell you exactly which one has advantage or disadvantage based on their engineering, manufacturing, quality, drivability, and just about everything else. Let's go. Welcome back. So this is going to be a really interesting comparison of the proven Honda Pilot against the all-new Mazda CX-90, against the all-new Toyota Grand Highlander. Which one is the best one from an engineer perspective? Well, you'll have to watch the whole video to find out. But first, let me do my regular audit of the exterior quality. This one is built in Lincoln, Alabama plant the Honda has, which builds the Pilot, the Passport, and also the Odyssey, some of the larger SUVs and larger platform vehicles. And you know what? The quality is actually shockingly good. If you can follow through here with me, the gap is only 3.5 millimeter there, actually 3 millimeter here with a perfect alignment. And if I keep on going here, 3.2 millimeters, a little bit wider here at 3.8 millimeters, and then back to about 3.7 millimeters. So the gaps are very competitive with others. The alignment is also really good. Everything lines up. But based on my comparison with other vehicles, what do I think? Well, from my perspective, the Mazda CX-90, which is built in the Hofu plant in Japan, does have the best exterior quality. Just based on gaps and also alignment of the panels, there's no question they seem to really know how to build almost a perfect body. But the Grand Highlander and this one is pretty close. It's almost about the same. I think the gap is a little bit better on the Honda compared to the Grand Highlander, but they're within 5 to 10% of each other. The Grand Highlander is built in Princeton, Indiana plant, along with its cousin model, Lexus TX. Again, this one is built in Lincoln, Alabama plant, not the usual plant that Honda produces other products in Marysville, Ohio. And I think the quality is really good. What about the paint job? This one does definitely have a fair amount of orange peel, but I feel like the paint job is a little bit better than the Grand Highlander, which also has a fair amount of orange peel. But I would say the Mazda CX-90 is still the best among the three in terms of the overall quality of the paint, the overall exterior panel quality. I would say Honda Pilot comes pretty close to Grand Highlander. It's hard to say which one is better. I would say maybe this one's a tiny bit better than the Toyota, but otherwise they're more or less the same. Again, Mazda CX-90 beat all of them in terms of exterior quality. Let's measure the paint thickness here as well. Okay, so let's do a quick paint thickness check, which is something I do as well. This one is 137 microns on the front hood, 114 in the front fender, 114 again, and let's do one more check, and it's about 100. So I would say the front section, which typically is thicker paint, it's a bit thicker than the Grand Highlander, also a little bit thicker than the Mazda CX-90. Those ones were about 100 to 120 microns range. So I would say the paint thickness is maybe 5% to 8% thicker in the front section here, but the front door and the rear door about the same. They're all about 100 to 110 microns, so give or take same paint thickness. So you know what, these three models are all pretty close, and all of them I would say is close to world class. But it's going to be interesting to compare the interior as well. So let's hop inside. Okay, so I'm inside the Honda Pilot now, and even though I don't have the Grand Highlander and the Mazda CX-90 side by side, of course I've known those cars for a very long time, so I can give you my take on which one I like the best. But first, let's do a quick quality check. I do my usual punch test to make sure everything is tight, nothing is loose, and thankfully Honda has chosen to keep a softer plastic all the way through compared to Toyota, which has moved to kind of hard plastic throughout the interior. So the actual design looks fantastic. All the moldings and so forth has a really good feel to it. Thankfully, we still have manual controls for temperature as well as for radio, which is kind of built into this infotainment system. Unfortunately, this is not as big as what we find in Mazda nor in the Grand Highlander. This one not quite to the same standard, but the overall quality is excellent. I can't really see anything loose. There's no gaps anywhere that I can try to put things through. And compared to, let's say, the Grand Highlander and the Mazda CX-90, I would say the overall design has a more of a cleaner look, a very beautiful look, and I actually really like it a lot. But I will admit that infotainment system is better in the Toyota Grand Highlander, but in terms of the design aesthetics, I still like the Mazda CX-90 the best, just because it has a bit of a more character to it. I think this one is very practical because we have a tray here as well, and the glove compartment is average size. Also really nice and big center console here, big cup holders, and large area for the charging pad, as well as extra space to put other things there. So overall design is good. I think in terms of the dimension, I forgot to mention that earlier, but the Grand Highlander is the biggest among the three. It's just a little bit larger than the Honda Pilot, about 1.5 inches or so. And then the Mazda CX-90 is actually quite big as well. That one is right between the Pilot and the Grand Highlander. So in terms of exterior side, you have the Grand Highlander, then the CX-90 and the Honda Pilot. But does that translate to bigger room inside? Well, let's take a look at the back seat here and see how it is. So I'm on the back seat now, and this will be somewhat subjective, but based on my height sitting in the front, I still got lots of room in the second row here, and actually very comfortable. I can tilt this seat, and also much like the 4Runner I used to own, I can move this forward and backward, something that most manufacturers don't have anymore. Although I will still admit that the Grand Highlander, being the biggest of the three, seems to have a little bit more legroom and a little bit more headroom perhaps here, but I would say it's pretty close to equivalent, although the Mazda CX-90 feels a little bit tighter. That one is definitely a little bit smaller on the inside. So in terms of practicality, I would say the Grand Highlander has the most amount of space, but I do really like the comfort of the Honda Pilot. They even give you a little bit of a pouch here for a cell phone, which is kind of cute. And generally speaking, the support system is really good. I think the seats are often really good in the Honda product, and there's no question that they took their time to design the right kind of seat padding and design, because it's very comfortable on the outer seat. Maybe the middle seat not as comfortable just because it's a bit harder material, but nevertheless there's lots of space here and decent amount of space on the third row as well. Although once again, I think the Grand Highlander does have the most amount of a seat on the third seat. But if you don't need that, plenty of luggage space in the Pilot. Now let's go for a drive and see how this thing really is when it comes to driving. Okay, so now this is the most important part of my review, which is the driving feel and the driving character of the three-row SUVs. Keep in mind that the Honda Pilot still has a naturally aspirated 3.5 liter V6 engine, good for 285 horsepower. So it's not a huge amount of power. However, I love the organic feel of this engine here, and I think it has probably the most natural, most comfortable feel in terms of the powertrain. I think Honda has been building this engine for a while, and it just feels right. Very smooth, very quiet, refined, decent acceleration, and just generally speaking, it has that kind of good old-fashioned Honda feel, if you know what I mean, in a sense that it's practical feel, but it's also very natural in its acceleration, in terms of the power delivery and so forth. So I love this engine, especially when compared to the Toyota's Grand Highlander engine, which of course is well designed, but it has transitioned over to a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. So it's either 2.4 liter turbo or 2.4 with a hybrid system. In both cases, Grand Highlander has only 4-cylinder engines and not V6 engines anymore. Now in the case of Mazda CX-90, they do still have 6-cylinder engine, but it's an inline 6, a 3.3 liter engine with a mild hybrid, or you can actually get plug-in hybrid. And so in case of Toyota and Mazda, they do have advantage over the Honda because they both offer a hybrid engine and even a plug-in hybrid in the case of Mazda. So we don't have that with the Honda. So if you want top fuel efficiency, you're going to have to consider those two models instead of this one. But just in terms of overall driving character, I love the engine on the Honda Pilot. It's proven, it's been around for a long time. It's going to remain reliable for a very long time. And I would say it's the engine that most of you guys will feel most comfortable with, because it just feels like many other cars that you've driven in the past. In terms of transmission, also really crisp, really good shifting. And then in terms of the steering and handling, that's an interesting question to answer, because all three cars have a different character. I would say in terms of the vehicle that has the sharpest feel and the most sporty feel, it would still be the Mazda CX-90, because that one is tuned differently. It's tuned more like a European vehicle, and therefore around corners and twisted turns, the Mazda CX-90 has that kind of real sharp character that none of the other competitors can seem to match. But in terms of which one actually still feels really natural, feels progressive, balanced and easy to drive, I think that award goes to the Honda, because this Pilot feels like many other proven Honda products from the past. It just feels right. The steering is not too heavy, it's not too light, and it has just the right amount of road feel, and I really enjoy it. I think it's one of the most balanced car out there. So I love the engine, the transmission, as well as a steering feel, because it just feels very organic to me. Having said that, it's pretty close to the Grand Highlander's feel. The Grand Highlander and the Honda Pilot, I think, feels quite similar in terms of steering character, steering feedback. Maybe the Grand Highlander steering is a little bit lighter than this one, and therefore I prefer the Pilot over the Grand Highlander. But once again, the Mazda CX-90 takes the top spot if you just want the sharpest feel and the sportiest feel, because that one has the quickest steering and the one that has the most amount of feedback from the road. What about the ride and suspension? So not so much for the driver, but for the passengers, that's a good one. That's a bit of a toss-up. I would say in that case, the Mazda CX-90 has the stiffest, most firm suspension, because again, it's geared for a bit of a sporty character. And then between the Grand Highlander and the Pilot, it's quite similar. But I think Honda has a bit of an edge over the Grand Highlander, in the sense that the suspension is tuned for both maximum comfort, but also to provide stability and to provide some amount of agility. I think the Grand Highlander had a bit of a stiff suspension. I commented that on several occasions, and it does provide really flat cornering, but it's stiffer than you might like. Even on the Lexus TX, which is a counterpart to the Toyota version, that one also has a very stiff suspension, and something that I hope that they will work on in a bit, because I don't think it's suitable for an average consumer who buys these products who wants maximum comfort. So in terms of suspension comfort, the Honda Pilot wins. So I think there are many different reasons to pick each one of those products based on what you like. If you want the sportiest character, buy the CX-90. If you want the most natural, most organic feel, I will buy the Honda Pilot. And if you are the type of person who still love Toyota for what they are, and you want to maximize fuel efficiency, then the Grand Highlander is always a good choice to buy, especially because it's got so much space inside, and it is definitely the roomiest of the three. So those are some of the choices you might want to think about. I'm going to wrap up here by saying that if I were to pick one, which one would I buy? Well, because I still like naturally aspirated engine without turbocharger, without hybrid. In terms of the feel of the driving character, I'm going to say that I might actually pick Honda Pilot as my kind of daily driver if I have to pick one of the three. But if I want to pick the one that is just for me personally, and I don't have to worry about carrying passengers, I will pick the CX-90 because it's the most fun to drive, and it is definitely the sportiest of the three. But if I have to carry a lot of passenger or a lot of stuff in the cargo, then it's going to be the Toyota Grand Highlander, because that's the one that has the maximum cargo capacity and maximum amount of space for the passenger. So those are some of the things that I would decide. I'm kind of curious as to what you think about choosing one of those three products. Also keep in mind that if you still wanted to buy an SUV that's built in Japan, then well, you only have one choice, which is a Mazda CX-90 that's still built in Japan. The other two competitors are built in the US, in Alabama and also in Indiana. So those two plants are, I would say, very close to each other in terms of overall quality, and therefore those are some additional factors you might want to think about. So as a conclusion, I can probably say that you can't go wrong with any of these three. They're all world-class three-row SUVs with its own character and with its own strength, and you might end up choosing one of them based on the preference for a particular brand. But if you were to kind of take the brand awareness away, then which one would you be happiest? Well, you know what? My best advice is go and drive all three on the same day if you can, back to back. And then once you drive them, you'll probably know which one you will like the best, because all three of them have a different character and different strengths and weaknesses that perhaps only you can decide. I hope this video was helpful in choosing the right kind of three-row SUV, and I hope that you found this video useful. If so, would you give me a thumbs up, make some comments, and if you haven't done so yet, could you also subscribe as well, and that would be truly appreciated. Until next video, I'm signing off for now. Thank you so much.